Hi. Hi, this is Susan Michel. I am here in Western Massachusetts. It is great to be here as always. I am the author of Surrender to Joy From Suicide to Serenity. I teach the transformational truth of A Course in Miracles, which we are all here to talk about, to explore, to embody. And when I can not only intellectually understand the principles of A Course in Miracles, but when I can live A Course in Miracles, I feel so much peace, love, joy, and happiness. The introduction of my book starts out, my passion is God. God is love and joy and beauty. He is all that is good in the world. Everything else is our own miscreation. When we are filled with joy, we are connected to God. When we are not joyful, we have lost our connection to all that is real. This is my message. It can be clarified with three simple words: surrender to joy. There is nothing to find. All we need to do is surrender. And a primary teaching of A Course in Miracles is that there is nothing to find in the world because there is no world. The external world is nothing more than a reflection of an internal condition. Projection makes perception. We see outside of ourselves a reflection of what's going on in our inner world. Today's lesson is lesson 33 in the workbook for students, because today is the 33rd day of 2024. You don't have to do the workbook sequentially by any means, but that's the only way I can do it myself. So I always stick to the lesson of the day. And lesson 33 states there is another way of looking at the world. So at each and every moment, I mean, A Course in Miracles is telling us that we have two choices: love or fear, truth or illusion, God or the ego. And when we choose to connect to source energy, which is connect to God and extend his love, we feel the truth of who we are. When we block God, we end up projecting our fear onto the world. We end up aligning ourselves with the ego, and then we don't feel good. Then we feel anxiety. Then we feel stress. So, A Course in Miracles, it's a mind training, so we're basically focusing on peace, love, joy, and happiness as often as possible by adhering to these principles. And I see a few other people in the room here with me. So if anyone has anything to say, I would love to hear. And now I see Zolma has her hand up. Thank you for being here, Zolma. Did you want to share? Do you have any thoughts?
I'm not ready yet. Actually, frankly, I was on a phone call. I'm about to come
Oh,
into you. I'm
oh,
going I'm coming in, so I need a moment. Thank
oh,
you for
take your
asking
time.
though.
I
Hi,
just I
how are
just
you today?
saw
I'm
I
here
just saw
though.
a
I'm
hand
here.
up.
I'm here.
Okay. All
All
right. I
right.
just saw
All
your
right.
hand raised. Michaela, did you have your hand raised? Did you want to share?
Um, I don't know what to share right now.
Oh, okay. No, I'm just
Yeah,
responding to a
yeah,
hand that's
yeah,
raised. I don't want to put anyone on the
yeah.
spot.
I don't think it's my hand. Okay.
Oh, oh, okay. Okay. I'm just seeing okay. Okay. So I think that was something on my computer. I apologize for that. Lesson 33 again is there is another way of looking at the world. So at each and every moment, we can focus on the peace, love, joy, and happiness in ourself and in our brother, or we can block God's love, because A Course in Miracles says it cannot teach us the meaning of love, because love is who and what we are. The only thing it can do is it can help us identify the blocks to love, because once we can release our ego, once we can release our fear, we automatically connect to our true power, our true source, our true sense of self. Yeah, I was listening to A Course in Miracles again during my run at the gym. And I started listening to it from the very beginning. And when I listened to the beginning of A Course in Miracles, it says the same thing over and over. But every time I hear it, I hear the information on a deeper level, because I think for me, intellectually, to understand the truth is a necessary start. But then to kind of bring that knowledge into my way of being, that's when I really start to feel the peace, love, joy, and happiness of God. I'm thinking of examples throughout the week where I was able to connect to source energy. I know one day I was in a little bit of a funky mood for whatever the reason. I was going around the Rotary, and there was a man who was playing the part of a homeless person in this lifetime. He was standing on the side of the road with a sign basically saying that he was in lack. So he was saying in this sign that he needed money. Now, is this the truth about him? Of course not. I mean, as a Course in Miracles student, we all know that we have everything that we need inside of us. But if he thinks that he needs something in order to be complete, I mean, money is, I guess, something that we all benefit from living in this incarnation. On some level we do. So I made an effort not to see him as lacking anything at all, but I did choose to give him some money, and he accepted gratefully. He was grateful, which is a characteristic of the divine, when you're grateful for something. And actually, when I handed him the money, I said, thank you, because it's never about me giving to someone who is in need. It's about me giving to him so I can feel the generosity that I have inside of me, so I can feel the generosity of God. Um, and I just know there are different disciplines that I can use throughout the day to keep myself plugged in to my God socket. Uh, there was another interesting seminar that I actually gave yesterday I work part-time now at a nursing home, which I speak about sometimes. And sometimes it's difficult, but I've gotten into the habit of praying a lot, giving my time there, to God. And I will be there for as long as it serves my purpose. When I am ready to move on, I believe that will happen. Yesterday, I was scheduled to uh, speak about being your best self, was the name of the seminar that I was given to facilitate. And I spent some time reading it over. It was religious in certain ways, not overly religious, but it did have a religious gist to it. But I think, and the people, the population that I'm giving the seminar to, it's a senior population. Some of them, if not the majority of them, have some kind of cognitive dementia right now at this point in this lifetime. Many of them were very religious, so they're not going to hear me from a metaphysical standpoint because they're religious, they're Catholic. So it was interesting, but I did feel connected to the material that I was presenting, and I did feel connected to the residents that I was talking to. And one thing that I read in my seminar, which was again coming from a semi-religious background, is that we can never ever find our peace, love, joy, and happiness in the world because it doesn't exist there. And so in the seminar, it talked about as we get older, we no longer have our physical self. We no longer have our social status. We no longer have a lot of the times the funds that we had when we were younger. And we a lot of times no longer have our health, because I've always heard people say, well, if you have nothing else, at least if you have your health, you're doing okay. Well, especially as a Course in Miracles student, I don't even think that's true because the body is not real. So even if we don't have our health, the only thing that can really make us happy is or peaceful is being plugged into our God socket, feeling connected to source energy. So I really did connect to some of the points in this seminar that I was facilitating. And I was conversing with the residents on different subjects, and I spoke about seeing the glass half full or half empty, right? Whenever you're looking at a glass, you can see what's in the cup or what's lacking in the cup. And to come from a place of abundance is going to empower us. Coming from a place of lack is going to disempower us, right? We always have a choice. We can choose to come from a place of abundance, which again, from a Course in Miracles perspective, we all have everything that we need already within us. So when we're coming from a place of abundance and realizing we don't need anything from our brother, the only thing that is going to make us feel better about ourselves is sharing God's love with our brother. And when we're coming from a place of lack or a place of neediness, we are basically living a lie. We're coming from an illusory state, and that is just going to lower our vibration. So I think it's a discipline, to focus on abundance. But when we do focus on how much we have, then we can come from our true self, our true source with a capital S. So fear, we have love on one hand, fear on the other. Acronyms for fear: false evidence appearing real. And then Zulma's friend has false evaluations affecting reality. I'm sorry, Zulma, I forgot the name of your friend, but I love both those acronyms, both those definitions. We have that choice at each and every moment. And then in the middle of my little seminar at the nursing home yesterday, I played that happy song by Pharrell Williams, and there was a video in the happy song, and it just showed people dancing and laughing and singing, and it was a very good song to play, to teach about focusing on abundance and focusing on joy, because it is a definite discipline. I mean, the word discipline has in it the word disciple, disciple of God, disciple of Christ. And A Course in Miracles says that we cannot know our true power until we recognize our complete and total dependence on Him. We cannot know the true power of the sonship until we recognize our total and complete dependence on God. So that's what I've been focusing on, it's I've been focusing on listening to God's guidance, listening to God's voice. And I definitely think there is a discipline involved in that. When I woke up this morning, I listened to lesson 33 on YouTube from a few different teachers, students interpreting the message. There is another way of looking at the world. And what that reminds me is whenever I am feeling off center in any way, whenever I am feeling less than in any way, whenever I am feeling insecure in any way, whenever I am triggered in any way, I can always choose to see the situation or the person in a different way. There is another way of looking at this, and then tomorrow's lesson kind of springboards from today's lesson. Tomorrow's lesson is I could see peace instead of this. However, A Course in Miracles is clear that it's one lesson per day, but they all kind of go together, and the lessons are extremely sequential in their way of being delivered. I was also listening to Circle of Atonement, and they were talking about an original tape from Helen Schuckman, the scribe of A Course in Miracles. And I found that to be very interesting as well. She was talking about how the Course in Miracles was scribed through her. And it was a fascinating discussion, actually. It was just really fascinating because Helen Schuckman was a Jewish woman. She was conservative in nature, conservative in theory, and she was atheistic in belief. And I truly think that made so much sense for Jesus Christ to choose a channel that was atheist, because I believe that if he was to scribe this material through someone that started off with any kind of religious orientation, it would be really easy to mistake his words. Part of the reason that A Course in Miracles was scribed or written in the first place was to point out the mistakes in traditional religion. And I just think it's fascinating what A Course in Miracles says. And I just realized too how perfect it is for someone like me, because I think that I was personally disillusioned with the church. And I too went through a period where I was agnostic / atheist. And then when I found A Course in Miracles, it just made so much sense. So for me, it was a life-saving, a mind-altering, a way for me to truly connect to my peace, love, joy, and happiness. And I noticed too when I was giving that seminar yesterday at the nursing home, and I asked the residents what they thought about God. I mean, many of them had very traditional fundamentalist ideas of who God was, and I guess what I can do with my more Course in Miracles ideas, it's not about changing anyone's relationship to God. A Course in Miracles says attack in any form is never of God, but to be clear about what my truth is, to protect the truth is um, my only necessary thing to do. The only thing I need to do is protect the truth. And I don't even have to say anything. I just have to be clear in my mind, I believe, about what's true and what's not true. Because another mantra that I have been saying to myself very often is I embody the essence of innocence. This is something that I even say to myself in the morning before I get out of bed, because I think guilt in any way keeps us disconnected from God. Guilt, fear in any way keeps us disconnected from God. So when I can embody the innocence of innocence, when I can embody the essence of innocence, I can remember who I truly am, and I can feel God's peace, love, joy, and happiness. You know, and then when you think about the sacrifice that happened with Jesus on the cross, I mean, that's as deep as you can get into Christianity. Did he die for our sins? I mean, what does A Course in Miracles say? Course in Miracles says that was his last useless journey. And if we truly believe that God sent his only begotten son to die for our sins, that makes me feel really, really guilty. And that keeps me connected to my ego. That keeps me lowly. That keeps me down. But when you see the message from A Course in Miracles perspective, A Course in Miracles is saying that's the last useless journey. And the message is to teach us that fear has no power over us. No matter how much fear is projected onto us, it cannot hurt us. Did he die for our sins? No, because I mean, there was a lot of fear-based thinking in that time period. There's a lot of fear-based thinking in the time period that we're living in now. But it's not about condemnation. It's not about attack. It's not even about defending our position, because when we feel the need to defend ourselves, we're also coming from an egoic mindset. It's about just letting it go and seeing our brother's projection as nothing more than a call for help. And so when somebody seems to be attacking us, if we can just love them in return, I mean, that's a miracle, because anything coming from love is a miracle. And as we spoke about in past weeks, and Zulma quoted A Course in Miracles on this, it's like when we can maintain that peaceful place when there's nothing going on in the world, well, that's great. But when we can maintain that peaceful state of mind when there is chaos in the world, when there's drama in the world, when we're being attacked, when it seems like we're being attacked by the world, that's when we can really see how much we have grown. When I can keep that place of peace, when there is drama going on in the world, that's when I can really feel the essence of who I am. Those are kind of some of the tests I believe we are here to learn in this earthly classroom. Does anyone have any thoughts? Oh, I see. I haven't been looking at the chat room. There's some great little knowledge here in the chat room. Does anyone have any thoughts? Would anyone like to share? Silma?
Yes, yes. You have said so much. I'm like, oh my God, this is wonderful. This is wonderful. Starting with the talk that you gave at your job. And it's funny you said it was religious and not metaphysical, but everything is metaphysical because everything is beyond the physical before it's physical. So in order for it to be religious, it had to be non-religious, if you will. It had to come from a metaphysical place first. Everything we see comes from what is unseen first. So even as you're talking, like you really were giving, well, from what I can hear, course messages. We when we no longer have this, you realize that that out there isn't what matters. The course teaches, seek not outside yourself, and that's basically what I'm hearing. That that nothing out there is really that is not important. It seems to us as important that we need these tangible things, and even when you talk about the person um wanted money, that brought to mind one of the principles about for those who temporarily have more, to those who temporarily have less, seemingly have less, because it's oftentimes it's those very things that makes a person realize I'm not alone. That person thought enough of me to give me, some money, a dollar, 50 cents, whatever it was. Um, that. And as far as health, I read Raymond Charles Barker. He says that we are health. We have to be. If having and being is everything, and whatever God is what we are, we're already whole. We call it holy, whole, same thing. We are already whole. And this is actually the message, a lot of the message that is written in the Bible that Jesus brought, that God is spirit, and that we that worship have to worship in spirit and in truth, that we are that he is one in the Father is one with him, that he was one in his brothers, that brothers are one with him, so we are all one in one another. The message is still all the same. It keeps on being all the same. You talked about love or fear, and fear, of course, is the call for love. Later on you said fear being the projection, call for help. Same thing. You said the same thing. You just said the same thing twice in different ways. It basically isn't love or fear. It's love or a call for love. We just happen to call it fear. Fear, which we call projection. It's still all a call for help, and it's being able to see it. And I'm trying to tie together everything you said. See it during the times when things don't seem the way we want. They're not the way we wish they were. We stay out of, we're not a wish world, but we're looking at it, we're saying, oh, I don't like I don't like what's going on here. But the truth is still true, that this is still a lesson that God would have me learn. I love your mantra. I embody the essence of innocence, not only in myself. That's a good one. I'm going to hold on to that one. Not only seeing the innocence in myself, but seeing it outside of me too. Because if I'm not careful and seeing myself as innocent, it's easy to see others as guilty. Echo, stop. Echo, stop. My Alexa thing is telling me that I have a study group coming up. That's not the 3 o'clock. But anyway, if I'm not careful and remembering that, seeing myself as innocent, remembering that everyone else is innocent as well. That for me, because it's easy to say I'm innocent, then that means you're guilty. So I have to be careful to see both. I see them innocent. I see myself as innocent. I see everything out there as innocent, even the stuff that's not looking like I want it to, because they're coming from a place where they're not seeing themselves for who they are. And you mentioned the crucifixion, that the message of the crucifixion was really that there is no death, and to teach love, because that is what we are. The message that I got from the crucifixion was forgiveness, absolutely forgiveness. Because even in the Bible it says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." That was the clearest thing for me that became a part of my life. Forgiveness, being able to let go of what's really not there anyway. And I think that's where I'm going to stop for now. You said so much. It was wonderful. All of it, all of it. Oh, Helen, she was atheistic in belief. She was atheistic in belief, but not but she studied a lot. Her mother was Christian. Her mother studied Christian Science. Her mother studied Christian Science, and her nanny was a Baptist. So she just, where her love of the Bible came from, hanging out with her nanny. So she studied the Bible. Atheists study the Bible. They
Hmm.
study it to basically disprove stuff, but they have a firm knowledge, if you will, of the Bible, not necessarily from the spiritual perspective, but to say, oh, look at that. No, that doesn't make sense. Okay, yeah, I can see where that's that. But she studied the Bible. She she didn't download the biblical stuff. That was stuff that she had already learned, as well as Christian Science. Her mother studied Christian Science, so her mother studied metaphysical stuff. Okay, that's all I got.
Thank you, Zulma. Thank you. Thank you. Um, yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for reflecting that back to me. Yeah, it's just all so great, here in A Course in Miracles, which is where I get my thoughts on the crucifixion. Jesus writes through Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford in chapter 6, The Lessons of Love, Roman numeral 1, the message of the crucifixion. And I have this part highlighted and underlined, and I have read it and reread it because I feel like it's just so important. It's even interesting. There's a chapter in my book about this, that in churches, what we see in most churches anyway, we see a cross, and then we see a skinny vision image of Jesus with his head down, one nail through his right hand, another nail through his left hand, another nail through both feet, with blood coming out of him. And this is what, in the traditional church, at least this was in my Lutheran church as a child, this is what I focused upon, at the service every Sunday. And I feel now, no wonder I had so much guilt in me. If this is what we are supposed to focus upon, it just is nonsensical. It's irrational. How can praying to suffering bring us closer to our personal empowerment? Because really, all that does is it makes us feel guilty. It makes us feel sinful and guilty that our evil deeds caused this beautiful soul to suffer. Like, it's just so irrational to me that we are supposed to pray to this crucifix. I went into a place of prayer at a local hospital, and I saw for the first time a beautiful image of Jesus. It was a chapel, and there was the cross, and the arms of Jesus were out to the side, but there were no nails in them. There was no blood. It was almost like he was being raised from the dead, and he had a smile on his face, and he had a halo over his head, and it symbolized joy, not persecution, not suffering. And I think that's what we need to focus upon. We need to focus on the peace, love, joy, and happiness of Jesus, not the suffering of Jesus. And I can think of, gosh, so many examples. I remember when that movie, The Passion of the Christ, came out. I think it was, 20 years ago, maybe a little more than that. It was directed by Mel Gibson, and it was Mel Gibson's, I think, depiction of what happened to Jesus. And I was living in New York City at the time, and I didn't listen to any of the reviews. The only thing I was going to buy was the title, The Passion of the Christ. And this is how I always saw Jesus, as being very passionate and very joyful. So I was so excited to see the movie. I went all by myself. And then I remember, as I was waiting, I think I was one of the first people to see the movies before it came out in the theater. It was like one of the movies. that was playing in the very beginning. And the people in the crowd were talking about how horrific it was, and I was like kind of flabbergasted. I was very surprised that it was they were talking about a lot of violence and horrific scenes, because I didn't expect it to be like that. But I did go into the movie and I saw the movie, and it was very difficult for me to watch that movie because there was so much violence. And this was written by or directed or produced by Mel Gibson. He comes from a traditional background. Um, and it is what the traditional Christian church focuses upon. It might have been extreme, but it's what the traditional Christian church focuses upon. Did it really happen? I guess so. But I don't think that Jesus wants us to focus on that, because that does nothing for our relationship with God. Jesus wants us to focus on his passion. Jesus wants us to focus on his joy. Jesus wants us to focus on his innocence. And Jesus Christ is teaching us that no matter what someone projects onto us, we don't have to take it in. We don't have to let it hurt us. In fact, if we do let someone else's projections hurt us, we are doing them a disservice, and we are doing ourselves a disservice. You know, the most loving thing we can do at any time is just embody our innocence and realize that other people's projections, other people's vengeance have no power over us, because they had no power over Jesus. And Jesus is our brother. Jesus is our role model. You know, in here, in the Course in Miracles, chapter 6, the lessons of love, Jesus writes, the crucifixion is nothing more than an extreme example. Its value, like the value of any teaching device, lies solely in the kind of learning it facilitates. And then I have the next sentence underlined and highlighted. It can be and has been misunderstood. This is only because the fearful are apt to perceive fearfully. So if we have fear inside of us and it has not yet been resolved, we are going to project this fear onto outside circumstances. We are going to project this fear onto our brothers. And that's what we need to be aware of. This is what A Course in Miracles is teaching us, to be aware of the blocks that we have not yet released. I have already told you that you can always call on me to share my decision and thus make it stronger. I have also told you that the crucifixion was the last useless journey the sonship need take, and that it represents release from fear to anyone who understands it. It does not represent fear. It represents release from fear. It does not represent persecution. It represents resurrection. It represents the fact that our brother's fear have no power over us. While I emphasized only the resurrection before, the purpose of the crucifixion and how it actually led to the resurrection was not clarified then. Nevertheless, it has a definite contribution to make to your own life, and if you will consider it without fear, it will help you understand your own role as a teacher. I love that paragraph. Any thoughts?
You were pretty clear on that, but it's really what it's about. Getting the fear out the way, because fear is something that we make up. We're just basically asked, look at the truth, look at the truth, look at the truth, look at the truth. Engage with God, engage with God, engage with God. Don't forget, don't forget. The sleep of forgetfulness is the unwillingness to remember. That's that paragraph, the the course's version of the Lord's Prayer, the last paragraph of chapter 16. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness, our wholeness is yours. What can there be in us? What can there be in me that needs forgiveness when yours, your wholeness, is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember. That's really what it is. That's mind wandering. That's not engaging. It's the sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation. Let us not wander into those places where we think that it's something that it's not. Let us not wander into those places where we think that what we see is real with the physical eye. Let us not wander to temptation. The temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given. Only that, only the truth, only the peace, only the love, only the joy that you. I love how you say that, the love, peace. I love how you always you say that. Those are your, and let us receive only this into the minds that you have given, and accept but this, accept what this in the minds which you love, and so it is. That's really the sleep of forgetfulness, just the unwillingness to remember. We forget. We choose to forget. We choose to forget. We choose to forget. And I love how you're going with this. You're just rolling right along with it. But it's all about putting the fear aside because it's not real. We're making it up. We're creating boogeymen. We just create the boogeyman and create the boogeyman, and then we become afraid of the boogeyman instead of realizing, wait, there is no boogeyman. I am safe. I am always safe. God is always where I am. I am what God is. The power that I've been given, all power and glory. That's the way it's written in all of the literatures. It's written that way. We've been given all power and all glory. And you're right. Jesus was a role model. He was an example. He was not the exception. He was the example. And that's what's key. Back to you.
Yeah, Jesus himself never claimed that he was the only one who is divine. What I have done, you can do also and more. And that's biblical. I just love that. I just love that fact so much. I mean, Jesus says that we have the power to do everything that he did. The only difference between him and us is that he has nothing that is not of God. So everything that Jesus is, we are too. Everything that Jesus has, we have also. However, Jesus has nothing that is not of God, and most of us still have some blocks to love that reside within us.
Susan,
That
Jesus believed it. Jesus believed it, and we don't. And that's the difference. He believed it. He never stopped believing. He stayed in faith. He stayed focused on that. And that's where we fall short. We like, oh, well, yeah, maybe. Oh, well, no, I can't. Oh, well, look at what's going on. That was the difference. Jesus stayed focused. He said, my job is to just do the will of my Father. That's it. That's it. That was his sole purpose, and he kept it that way. We, on the other hand, we let ourselves get caught up in other things. Jesus continually believed it, continually, and we didn't. Although the only passage in the that I read in the Bible that makes me say, well, why have you forsaken me? If indeed, because we don't know what was actually said and what wasn't. We don't. We really don't. We weren't there. We don't know if he said it. We don't know if he didn't say it. We don't know what was added. We don't know. We don't know anything. But the passage, why have you forsaken me? That was like that moment, like, you know what? This really hurts, man. This is really painful here. This is what? This is what you had me do. Unfortunately, since we never know what anything is for, I believe in that moment because Jesus was a man in that moment. I think in that moment, this is just me. In that moment, he may not have realized what it was for either. That it would become what we're having right now. But I believe that ultimately, because the last words were, is written that he said, "Into your hands I commend my spirit." It's like, okay, I surrender. I surrender. It's enough already. There were times in the Bible where it says he escaped their grasp, so he ran. There were moments when Jesus, he wasn't like, not no, he ran. So you know, so there's, but I believe that ultimately the ultimate difference between Jesus and us is that he was always focused on, this was my mission, this was my mission, this was my mission, and we forget, we don't engage, we forget, you know, we let our mind wander, and that's basically my opinion, the difference. Back to you.
I like that very much. I like that very, very much. I, so I will to will thy will. I say that a lot. I will with a small w, to will thy will with a capital W. So, and focus, I think focus is so important, as you just stated. I mean, to focus on the good, to focus on the beauty, you know. There's so many lines, you know, The Invitation by Araya Mountain Dreamer. One of the lines in that poems, I want to know if you can see beauty even when it's not pretty, and if you can source your day from that presence. I don't think my words were exact. It's something to that gist. I mean, there's always beauty, and when we can focus our mind on the beauty, when we can focus our mind on the good in other people, when we focus our mind on the innocence in other people, that's when we can feel the innocence within ourselves. You know, and in terms of forgiveness, Course in Miracles says we don't forgive our brother to get brownie points from God. We don't forgive our brother to make our way into heaven in the afterlife. The reason we forgive our brother is because if we don't, we're seeing what is not true. The only way we can feel God's forgiveness towards us is by us forgiving our brother. To forgive our brother is the only way to feel our innocence. To forgive our brother is the only way to feel the truth about who we are. So again, the person that benefits the most when we can really forgive from our heart is us. That's when we can feel the peace, love, joy, and happiness of God. That's when we can become a conduit for miracles, because we're clearing our channel. We're releasing our darkness. So forgiveness benefits us the most, you know. And it's a completely different way of seeing what forgiveness is all about. I have a little hinted page here next to my computer, and this is from A Course in Miracles workbook. Forgiveness recognizes what you thought your brother did to you has not occurred. I mean, that's huge. You know, the thing, the resentment that I'm holding on in my mind has no power over me. And forgiveness is about me realizing that it never happened. It's not real. It's negative. It's an illusion. It sees there was no sin. And in that view are all your sins forgiven. So I'm not overlooking an error. I'm not coming from a place of superiority. I'm not saying, see, you were bad, but because I'm righteous, I'll let it go this time, but don't let it happen again. You know, I mean, basically, have you ever heard the expression, well, I can forgive, but I will never forget? Well, that doesn't really work. From A Course in Miracles perspective, forgiveness is about overlooking the error, like seeing that it never really happened. And the funny thing is, when people say forgive, but I won't forget, they feel like on some way they're going to protect themselves from the same thing happening again in the future by not forgetting. But the truth is, when we don't forget something, there's something in our mind that stays attached to that very thing that we didn't let go of. Because if there's something in me that does not forget it, I have not fully learned my lesson. So the same thing will end up repeating itself in my life in the future. It's only when we can truly forgive that we let go completely. But when there's anything in our mind that has not yet fully let go of that grievance will repeat itself because it is a lesson that I have not yet learned. Right, Zolma? I see you shaking your head
Absolutely,
in
absolutely. Because that means
agreement.
I'm constantly holding the armor. I'm holding the armor because I'm waiting for it to happen again. I'm actually setting up for it. But McKaylee's hand was up. I see McKaylee's hand's been up.
Oh, good. I would
Uh,
love to hear Michele. Yes, please share,
Uh,
Michele.
well, I love what you just said, Susan, on forgiveness, because I was listening to a talk from Ken Wapnick recently, and he said, and I made sure to write it down. He said to make sure that your goal that day for the whole day is forgiveness. That's your whole goal. So I wrote that down about working on forgiveness, along with, that it's a classroom, and it's just really interesting to me too, because the more set that as my goal, forgiveness, I love that you're talking about that. uh, the more I step back as an observer, and I see how this is such a dream. And we're constantly choosing. You can choose either between fear or love in the dream. And the synchronicities that come up in your life, I mean, it brings it to you, and you can look at, because it's like how you almost think like somebody's watching me, somebody knows everything, must be undercover, because it's so synchronistic, but it's a dream. And so you could go into fear and start getting paranoid that somebody's watching you. And then if you just step back, go into love, forgiveness, your right mind, it's like you see the miracles that happen within that synchronicity. And it's beautiful, but it's really interesting. I mean, it's so interesting, this dream, synchronicities, and having forgiveness as your main goal. You're really just here to, forgive. I had an experience. My youngest son, he's only 22, and he wants so much to be an adult. And his favorite phrase with me is, "I know, mom." So I can't really. I try to tell him something because I'm older than him, and it's always back, "I know, mom." So I'm constantly he's defensive, and he doesn't know because he's younger. And so I have to really step back and forgive him. But I had something really beautiful yesterday. He shared with me. He said that he was driving in his car, and one of his best friends from high school passed away from COVID back in 2020. Dakota's now 22, and that really affected him. They were really close. And he said that he put on when he turned his car on, and he put on the console in the middle, it lights up, and he's got his Apple Play, whatever that comes on. He said his friend Dowd was calling him on his console. And that's his friend who passed away. So he's like, he's calling me. What? And so then he checked, and then it went away. And then he said, and the song came on that him and Dowd used to listen to. So he said he looked at his phone on his recents, and Dowd never called him on his phone. So he shared that with me, Mr. I know, mom. He shared that with me. And so I had to be really careful with him and step back and then just show love. And so he's starting to, I think, through my forgiveness and my only offering miracles and love back to him, which he's my biggest teacher, right? Uh, and not for myself to get defensive. It's starting like a flower to be beautiful in my son, that I see there's a part of him where the miracles are taking place. And I don't know what was happening with Dowd coming through the Apple iPlay on his console in his car. I don't know the truth of that, but it started opening him up. So it's beautiful to see the synchronicities in our life and when we apply forgiveness in our life and as the goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a beautiful story. And I loved everything that you said. I heard through the Circle of Atonement, I believe it was, that Bill Thetford, in the latter stage of his life, all he did was focus on forgiveness. That was his goal each day, to forgive everyone that he might have any kind of resentment towards, to forgive them. And by the end of his life, he was extremely happy, very peaceful, very connected to source energy. And it requires discipline, it requires dedication. I love how you related to your friends. I mean, your son, how you related to your son, always working on just forgiving him and seeing the beauty in him and not taking his I know to heart, and loving him. I guess that's it. Just continuously loving him. And then you started to see like changes that he came to on his own, maybe in big part because he knew how much you loved him and because he knew that your love was steadfast. I mean, that's so beautiful. I think of my own mother and how she loved me so unconditionally. I hadn't found A Course in Miracles prior to my mother's death, but I thought about her today actually. And I think with my mother's unconditional love, it just meant the world to me. That's how people grow. That's how people, step into their true empowerment, is by other people's love, not by other people's condemnation. When you're condemning someone, it just they shrink, and I shrink. But when I can like unconditionally support people and love people, that's how they grow and that's how I grow. So I love your story, and also about synchronicity. I mean, life is supposed to be synchronistic. I mean, life is I mean, when miracles do not occur, something has gone wrong. I mean, that's what Jesus says in A Course in Miracles. So I mean, synchronicities are supposed to happen, when we can just let go and let God and Christ guide our lives. So I love your share. Thank you so much.
Me too. But what I'm learning, I have a 23-year-old who's not my blood, but she's been a part of my life since she's 8 years old. I've learned to ask more questions instead of trying to tell her stuff, because when I was her age, I knew everything too, or so I thought. And she doesn't know anything about being 67, but I remember what it was to be 23. I just ask her questions. I do. I just ask and let her hear it. And this way we can continue to dialogue. And the fact, Michele, that he trusts you enough to tell you that he didn't think that you would think that he was crazy or something like that, for him to tell you that, that's huge. That is huge. Because a lot of youth are like, I'm not going to tell them that. They're going to think, what will they think? But the fact that he trusted you enough to share that with you, that's huge. I always ask questions, even when I think I know the answer. But see, what's good for me may not be for her, and she's always going to give me the I know, or contradict it, whatever. So I just ask questions and let her hear it for herself, and then ultimately she ends up asking me questions. That's the part that I like getting to. But yeah,
Thank you.
that's yes, indeed. That's really what it's all about. To just keep on loving.
Thank I'll ask him more questions, and I appreciate you telling me that, because at that age, because you have a 23-year-old, he's 22, they're very I know it all, and they're very defensive, and it comes from them wanting so much to be an adult. And he constantly, since he's been 18, he reminds me how old he is now, so he's such an adult. But the interesting thing is, life, the synchronicities, life opens it up. So he saw that phone call, he saw it only with his own eyes. It was only given for him because it didn't show up on his phone to show the whole world. It showed up on his console, his car phone, that Dowd was calling him. So we don't know what happens exactly. Nobody really knows. And that's beyond the course. That's not the teachings of the course of, once the physical body, your dream is over. But I mean, there's other teachings that teach on that. That's not the course's teachings. But he did, I said, he's around you. I said, Dowd is around you. I said, that's really neat. And I said, I just said, maybe he's your guardian angel. And I mean, because it could be the Holy Spirit. I don't know. And he said, well, I don't know. He did question. Asked me, he said, well, I don't know if I should tell his mom. And I just said, yeah, I think you should tell his mom. She would probably, you don't know what she's experienced. That's what I told him. I said, she may have experienced things that you don't know. So he just he was quiet about it because he's very, young, and he didn't know, but it definitely, thank you for telling me about the questioning, to have dialogue with him in that way. And it's beautiful too. I just love the forgiveness thing, and it's really helping me because it's making me closer with him because they feel it. Uh it's not like we have a lot of conversations, but I think that people just feel it, that you're there. You're not going to judge them. You're going to come from a state really of love and non-judgment, and then they open up to you because of that. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And yeah, like you were saying, Susan, I mean, if the synchronicities are just a part of our life, and if they don't happen, then something's gone wrong. I have a new patient because I work part-time as a nurse and I do home health, and I had a synchronicity. I went into, I had to do a meet and greet, and the nurse that was training me, her name was Kenna. And I didn't think about this till afterwards. Well, I love Ken Wapnick, right? I used to go to his classes in Temecula. So Kenna, Kenneth. And then my patient, her whole room is full of lighthouses everywhere. Like, she collects lighthouses. Well, that was their emblem, was the lighthouses. So it was interesting because I heard the ego. It wanted me to go into fear, like, oh, the nursing board is setting you up. Because then the nurse told me, oh, she wanted to be a flight nurse. Well, I used to do something like that. So I was like, okay, right away the ego's coming at my mind saying, they're after you. The nursing board's after you. They're going to watch you. You're being set up. And then I just stood back and I looked at it with love and miracles. And I said, no, this is a dream. I've written this script and this is beautiful. So I had to look at it the other way. But yeah, that ego is right there to scream at you all the time. And it's very negative. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great story. That's like today's workbook lesson number 33. There is another way of looking at the world. There is another way of looking at this. So that was wonderful that you decided to release the fear and come from compassion and love. Yeah, so thank you, Michaela. Thank you, Zoma. I love this talk today. Thank you for being here with me. And it is now a few minutes past 2. So our time is up for this particular session. And as A Course in Miracles says, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. The only thing that is real is the love. Thank God for that. I love you all. Thank you for being here. And I will return the microphone to Lynn.
Thank you so much, Susan, Michelle, and Zilma and Michaela, everybody who joined in. I'm going to stop. I'm actually going to close this meeting out and open up a new one. So here we go. And so, Chris.